gentlemen, boy, do I have a treat for you today. But before I even get to that, I'm lucky to be standing upright today. And pardon my voice, a little bout of food poisoning. But as you know, I ride through everything and pull out all the stops. And today's no less. So, being the gamer that I am, I want to shout out Amy at Elevate because, oh my God, I wouldn't be upright today without you. And thank you to John at Crack because there's no way I would have gotten this far today to make it here. So, I want to take the time first to introduce my guest, Samantha Melgar. So Samantha, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello. Yes, of course. My name is Samantha Melgar. I am from Honduras. Hesham and I met at UFC gym. He was actually a trainer of mine for a little while. I learned so many things from him, and here we are today. We have some great information, some tips, some education to share with everyone. And I'm excited to be here. I also wanted to say I'm very proud of you for getting here to this point. It's one thing to have an idea, and it's another thing to turn it into a reality. And I know what it takes to get until this point, and we're here. We talked about this over a year ago, so kudos to you for that. Cheers, my friend, and let's do this.
Okay. Well, but when as soon as Samantha's done being my marketing team, I want to go into her story because I really want to dive into a lot of things based on experience. So here we go from the start. You had a lot of challenges that got you to this point. See, Samantha's a successful entrepreneur in more than one business. Super driven, got into really great shape, got really strong overnight. Really had the work ethic, the passion. And I got to tell you something, when I show passion and yell at her, she'll view it as motivation. But to me, it's not really motivation. This is somebody super self-motivated. And really the topic I want to go into is, how did you arrive at that point?
All right. So there's so much wisdom in this world. There's so much knowledge, and there's so many things that some people know that another might not, have never even heard of. So in saying that, I want to take this back to my sign and my horoscope. I don't know if you know, I'm a Sagittarius. And out of all the horoscopes, all the signs, mine came with a bow and arrow, as well as it's half horse, half human, half centaur. So it comes with an archer's bow and arrow, which in my life has always been, do I want that? How do I get it? Like, it's literally in my DNA. So since I was little, if I wanted something, I just had to figure out how to get it done, how to build a plan and how to do it. And I've really just over the years continued like developing that, even when I didn't know exactly what it was. Then later on, doing some, inner studying, finding just knowing more about myself, that was already encoded in my DNA.
Okay, I guess the question I want to follow up with that on is, following the process, you come up with a plan. What's the drive to follow the process? See, sometimes you may want to hit that arrow. You may want to hit that target, but you may have to do 100 days worth of work before anybody recognizes anything or you have anything tangible to show for it. What kept you driven in that focus?
For myself, and what's the vision? Oftentimes I feel like people will start something and then like in a month or 2 months, they're done or they're over the process. I fall in love with the journey and I'm like, all right, I didn't get there in this month, but I'm seeing the little changes. Let me just keep showing up, like one foot in front of the other. Even if I didn't want to show up, okay, maybe I didn't make it because I needed to give myself some rest, but what am I eating? What am I feeding into my brain? What am I listening to? So it's about direction, not speed always, but it's always one foot in front of the other.
What inspires you about the process?
Are we talking about fitness or like a specific goal?
Fitness, business, are they any different? It's really the same goal setting, isn't it? The same process. What's the drive to continue the process? What's the drive to get to the goal? What's the drive to get to success? See, when I look at you, I see the same thing, and I've seen the same thing from the start, right? You settled in one successful business, the restaurant. You then moved on to a clothing line. And then we talked about before mushrooms and the health, both anti-inflammatory and mental health benefits before. And we've gone through this a couple of times. This is the story I want you to tell the audience. This is what I'm really looking for. What drove you in all three aspects?
And something that you might not know, that I also practiced real estate for a full year, and I had an amazing year. So goals, ambition, achieving, but not for the material gain. It's just like, I can do it. Like, why not me? Why not try? Like, let me learn, let me figure out the ropes, let me ask for help, let me get the experience. And you just meet so many people in the process. So now taking that to the gym, I've been working out since I was 18. I loved being active. I loved, the mobility I had, the energy I had, but I never really had guidance on how to properly power lift, how to properly eat. And I would always show up though. And I was trying to learn, whether it was online, whether it was through videos. And I know when you came into my life and we started training, I was like, okay, I understand like where he's going with this. There was structure to the goal versus me just trying a little bit of everything to get there. I was still doing good because I was motivated, I was disciplined, but then it was amazing to have a structure that was like, all right, this is what we're doing, this is the plan, just do it, just show up, and you just start seeing the changes. Because a lot of times that's what it is, we lack the knowledge. We might have the drive, but we don't have like the exact way to get there. And day after day, I just kept seeing like, all right, I was already showing up here, but now I have direction. All right, let's keep going, let's keep going. I remember you were like, you're not tired? You're sure you can do this today? And I'm like, yeah, I want to do it. Like, I enjoyed the journey, but I'm passionate about like that end goal and being different and being inspiring. And it's an energy and it's a confidence. It's a lifestyle too. Like, working out isn't just for vanity. Working out is like, when I have to pick up merchandise from my restaurant, if I didn't work out, do you think it would be easy to lug all those boxes and cans and everything that I have to do? Me, this girl, is the one who does it. I'm by myself in my business and I'm proud of it, but fitness and working out and strength helps make my job easier. There's this commercial that I love that I've seen, and I think, I don't remember where I saw it, but it was like the lady working out, right? And she's like, I think she was like picking up a ball, putting it down. And then you see her at work. She was a flight attendant. So she's putting up the luggage. Now, if she didn't work out, that would be really hard. That would be taxing on her body. That would be draining of her energy, which would then make her miserable at her job. So I really want people to like understand, like, this is energy in motion. This is strengthening your body. This is giving you a better quality of life to enjoy your life without aches and pains all over the place. That's for fitness. I don't know if that fully answered it, but then now for the restaurant. The restaurant has been such a process. My parents, they're both immigrants. They came from Honduras.
Right.
I've seen them, what hard work, what kindness, what discipline can create in your life. And I always admired them for all their hard work. And just since little, like, I wanted to go to work and interact with people, because what we do is, it's food, right?
Right.
So that's a really special connection to have with people if you're doing it out of love.
I think it's even more, it's because you buy from who you like. I always tell everybody all the time, I'm just going to say it because it's the truth. I'm top 5 programmers in the state of Florida, but nobody knows it. You're not really qualified to evaluate me, right? So when we look at it kind of this, how do I relay the message to you? It's kind of like you said, right? If you really look at it, he explained it to me so I understood why I was doing it, right? And I would often say to you, sue me for the correct stuff. So here's the context as to why you're doing it. Here's the application to the part. Can I take it to the next level? And then where could I go from there? That's my passion. Now, when you took yours, you took one passion, rolled it into the next passion, and then rolled it into the next obstacle. What it is a motivation thing, and I always look at it this, and that's kind of why you're here. When you stop being motivated to do things, and you sit on the couch and you go into retirement, you are dead. Or how would they say it? Like, what is the line in the Drake song?
If I was doing it for you, I'd already be done.
No, but the other one, Everybody dies, but not everybody lives.
And, that goes to something that's very like prominent in my life and everyone sees it, passion.
Right.
You need to have a passionate, fulfilling life. And how do you do that? You build that through confidence. You build that through showing up. You build that through doing the hard things that you don't want to do.
Right.
That at the end of the day is like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, that's that little spark. That's that little drive.
That's where I was going now with the correlation you made for me, and we were talking about it behind the scenes earlier, was the only thing I wish I didn't have my daughter see was me run the room and yell at everybody like that, because that was the one thing where I didn't want her voice loud. I didn't want her to think that's okay. But Daddy's passion kind of came out. And when the passion came out to address this, I'm going to get this right, and I don't give a shit who you are. We're going to get this right. This is what I do. So it's, how do I stamp my culture? And then where do we go from there? In this particular case, how do you take one business genre, work with one set of employees, and then take it to the next team? Because it really is your teams. And if your teams weren't functioning, you wouldn't go from one to the next.
Yeah, that's a big topic. And that's something that like, it's really, I'm really happy that we brought this up. This is going to go all over the place. But something that I realized, like, I've been working since I was a baby, okay? Like, I wanted to make money and make my goals and dreams happen. So a lot of times I see women go getter, hustler, which it's important to have that drive.
Right.
But not to let that like run your life. There's so many women I know successful, like in all different businesses, but they're so in their masculine. And it's like, they don't give themselves a moment to breathe. They don't give themselves a moment to relax.
Right.
They're just so reactive. And it's sad because they don't even know that they're doing it. One. Two, it literally is a trauma response of like, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. Nobody's taking care of me. So I got to get it done and not let anybody have a fast one over me. I got to lay down the law, what I expect. When in reality, it's like a fear of being open and like kind and nurturing and in your feminine way. So that's to say, I used to be in that, right?
Right.
Because I remember one of my first jobs, like in 2 weeks, I got promoted up to being manager, and in this other one, and a week later, I was in charge of all these people. So sometimes what happens, when you come up with the people, and then you excel, then people look down on you or look at you differently.
Right.
So then you have to be in a more of a protective way. When we were all buddies, when we were all just doing the same thing, but now they see me as somebody that can run the show and help direct the show, and now they look at you different. So that creates like a pain, because you're like, hey, we were a team, and now you look at me different. Now you're giving me this.
You view that as animosity?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It happens. So then, okay, boom, right? Let's say that starts happening when you're 18, and then you just keep getting good jobs and being in charge. But what does that also take, right? That takes staying the extra hour. This one called out, but you showed up, putting your heart into the business or whoever you're representing. But people don't like that, because people like to be average and call out and not show up and be sick and be that. So then they look at you different, right? So then that creates, you're like, oh man, like this is creating resistance with my team. So then you start to harden and you start to guard yourself.
The analogy I always give is, people want to be gangsters till it's time to do what gangsters do. You want everything that comes with the accolades, but we don't want to put in the work, right? And they don't understand the work and the drive that gets to get there. And if somebody outworked you, you should kind of respect the fact that they excelled. It doesn't always work that way. The other thing, sometimes in a leadership position, it can kind of be lonely at the top, right? I'll use the analogy, I had to tell my daughter, I'm not your friend, I'm daddy. We can have fun, but you need to do, daddy sets the expectations. It's got to be what you do. Right? You represent daddy. Daddy doesn't need to be friends, doesn't need to be the extra loved. Daddy needs a quality person. Okay? And daddy needs to develop a quality person. And that's daddy's job. The rest of it will come along with it. Now, I'm just in a place, and she's still young, where she respects daddy for daddy doing that. and we love daddy more. Now, I don't know how long we're going to love daddy more for daddy putting his foot down like that.
And it's needed.
But there have to be boundaries.
And there has to be that strong, like, masculine, this is the order, because that's what the masculine is. The masculine is structure.
I'm going to agree with that, but I'm going to say it to you like this. I think that has to be even in a leadership position regardless. You can't really be afraid of being disliked. And
yes.
I think that leads in certain cases to, go ahead.
But, so back to the other thing, it's like you kind of get into this space sometimes where it's like everything's growing, everything's thriving, but like you have to have this hat on of like, this is the order and this is what we're doing. And as a woman, that's not really where you want to be. Sometimes it's past things that have happened. Like I was telling you, you know, your people that you were all buddy with, now you're up and now they look at you different. That makes you stay in that hardened, well, I have to stand my ground and lay it down like this, when really you love your teammates or you love your employees, but you know, if you go soft, they're gonna walk all over you. So that's like something that I had to sit down and like center myself with my heart and be like, no, I'm gonna do it different at my restaurant. I saw in many other places the way that they would talk down on their people. They wouldn't like work with their schedules and adjust it. My team is my backbone. If I don't make them happy, who's gonna have my back? Now, there's boundaries and there's respect and there's flexibility. But I love that in my business, like at some point I was able to like shift, especially when I bought it over and it wasn't with the other management and owners. I was like, we're doing it different.
Right.
Again, this is going to go all over the place. One thing that you notice about like my employees and my people tell me all the time, they're happy. They're happy workers. You can tell that you take care of them. I have color days for my girls because why? Growing up in all the jobs I had, all black, hair tied up, very in your masculine. You were working, fine, that's the uniform. But life is so full of color and I love to embrace that. And I've loved sharing that with my team, that it's like that passion and that love and that light and that life is flowing onto them because of the environment that they're in, because of the way that their uniform gets to be colorful and different things. So I realized by centering myself into my feminine, being nurturing, but also being like, you know, mom's still gonna tell you what's right and what's wrong. But like dad is gonna tell you what's right is what's wrong. But it's like the delivery and like the overall experience of nurturing them and pouring into them that has allowed me to continue to grow this business with happy people, with happy customers.
The part of management that I always look at is there should be a continuous development. And for you, that's part of development. I love that. Which leads me to another case or another topic, mental health. Are you comfortable discussing your battles?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start there.
All right. So mental health can mean so many things for so many different people. We go through so many experiences, like night and day. It can mean always having to be the strong one.
Okay.
It can mean overthinking, doubting yourself. It can mean coming back after a burnout of too much work, after a heartbreak. It can mean so many things. I feel like in this society, there's so much pressure on people like to look this way and to act this way and to have this and to have that. But you have to like center with yourself and know what is it that you want to create for your life. Like, comparison is the thief of joy. So you need to sit with yourself and know, okay, is that stressing me because it's what everyone else is doing? Or is it what I want to do? Because do I really want to do this? Or is it just because everyone's doing it? And when you can like have that awareness and center back to you, you completely change the game.
I would agree. But before I even go further, there's a number of topics I want to go into this on Delph. Your experience, what really took over, and your introduction into mushrooms as well.
Okay.
I'm gonna leave you. Go.
Wow. I'm telling you, this conversation.
Let it lead one way. Let it lead all the way along. Go.
All All right. How do I even...
Let me
Can you say it again?
Yeah, I'm going to give it to you straight up. Okay. I want to go back to those mental health experiences. I want to go all the way through.
Okay.
I then want to, what led me to this stage, that stage, this stage, and that. If I have to walk you through this, I'm going to. But there's a couple of things in this pattern that I want everybody to see. You go through trauma. You go through situations. You go through discovery. You get one roadblock after another, and you're sitting here because you overcame all of them. Okay? And then you get to a situation where you start to understand what fulfillment is, what grounding is. I know personally, I know you're church going every Sunday. I know what time you go. I know everybody else doesn't. I have an idea of your schedule of who you are, right? I understand where God grounded you. I understand where certain things were changed, maybe by microdosing of psilocybin, and why we didn't need to go the medical route for any of those factors. I understand the meditation. I understand you as a person who lives sometimes in a box and does not see anybody past 4 feet because we're so focused on what we're trying to get done. Mm-hmm. You live in your own world. You created your own world. I want to hear more about all those things.
Oh.
Is that rapid fire enough for you? Go to work.
All right. So, I mean, we're going to take it all the way back, right? Because trauma starts
Please,
from
I would like to do that right from there.
little.
Let's go.
So, again, I came from super hardworking, amazing, good people who are my parents.
Right.
That's also a lot of pressure. When you're the first immigrant into a country, I hope I don't cry. You know what it is to starve. You know what it is to walk with no shoes. You know what it is to have to share this little carton of milk with all your little brothers and sisters. So when you come to America, back then, it's like you already know hard work because you're out in the fields. You're cutting pineapples. You're cutting trees, honey, barefoot. And then you come here and you're like, wait, I can do this job however many hours you need, and I'm gonna always get money. Where back home, I could work a month and I won't make what I make here I'll make here in a week what I make over there in a month.
It's funny because we'll often talk about, and you'll often hear the crowd here, when you criticize the government here, for instance, and everybody will talk about go back to wherever. They don't understand the opportunity was here. You understand how great the opportunities are here. It's not black and white. You understand how great the opportunities are here. It doesn't mean you agree with the politician's decision making, and there should be a separation of both, right? And continue from there. I feel for you in that I'm the first generation here as well. So continue.
So, growing up, like I always, my parents, I would go to sleep. They were at work. I would wake up. They were at work. I wouldn't see them. I would see them bits and little pieces. My grandmother is the one who was taking care of us and raising us, which leads into another situation of my grandmother then kind of, in some way, I think it's like jealousy, or I don't know what to call it still, but as we continue talking, she tried to turn us against our parents. All right? So you are going to work, slaving away 2-3 jobs to give your family a better future, to have your daughters at home and the grandmother at home, so everyone is taken care of, and you're slaving away, mom and dad, because they were teammates from the get. They met here. They're both from Honduras. So that's already time away from your child, right? Like, we're not in the routine of breakfast together. We're not in the routine of dinners together, which is so important for a family.
I would agree.
So important, because life has so many responsibilities that sometimes we need to make ends meet. So we might not have dinner together, but you have food there.
It's often said the downfall of the American family is when they stopped all having dinner together. I remember it didn't really matter. I could have went away. I'd be away at school, and if I got home and I was home, they didn't care what I did all day, but I had to be at the dinner table. It was just a way to connect. It was
exactly.
And by the way, we're talking about this at 22. I'm not talking about this at 12. We're talking about that even at 30. Listen, make all the plans you want, but still be here.
Right? You followed it up.
Action of how that goes. Yeah.
Exactly. So to pause right there, you can see, wow, they sacrificed that time with their kids to make sure they had a foundation and better future. But was that really worth it at the end? Because we're losing precious moments. And little do you know, in my situation, which I know can be many people's situations, the person you thought was going to be taking care of them is the one turning them against you. How do you deal with that? So that's a maternal wound. It's a grandmother wound. That's like, wait, can I even trust my family wound? And what was crazy about that was like growing up, I've always had my own thoughts. I've always been a very independent person. My parents tried to raise me like in a very strict way, kind of like back home in Honduras.
Right.
But I'm like, y'all had me in America, so am I supposed to be following this program or that program?
Yeah.
Because I love you, you're my parents, you're my family, of course, but I'm all day long with this culture. And then I come home, and unfortunately, because you're working, building a business, busting your back, which is hats off, like, I respect them so much for that. But it's like we weren't really there together. We weren't doing those dinners. We weren't having that quality time. We weren't nurturing our bond. Yes, you're my parent. But unfortunately, because that generation and the previous one was just in survival mode, that bonding and nurturing wasn't even like, oh, let me sit here and like talk with my child. And
since we're on that topic, because, and I'm going to say, not that I did, well, I guess I dealt with something similar, so we'll say it this way. Do you think because everybody was a certain way over there, they just thought the role would be pressed upon you, and they really didn't look at the society's impact here on you?
Which role, though?
Okay. Work, financial stability, maybe education, any of those.
Did I think that because of their life?
Let me try it this way. So my parents came over the same way.
Okay.
Kind of left the culture, try to fit into this culture here. They probably overdid the fit into this culture here problem. The second part was they wanted me to chase education to have the same financial security they had, that they came over here chasing and they were able to attain, right? But through the process of attaining that, what did you lose?
I do think that they obviously dreamed of us having a better future. Right. Ideally, they wanted us to go the educational route. I was never really that person. Like, I was good in school, but like I was more entrepreneur. How do we make the money? How do we get it going? Which,
do you think because of that, I'll say this, you arrived at this point because they chased it. You arrived at this point because you wouldn't have had those opportunities overseas. And you had the opportunities to build those businesses over here. And they laid the financial groundwork for it.
I'm gonna keep talking through it because it's like a lot that we're, right? So seeing them work so hard, although they weren't there present with us, but I knew what they were doing for us and I knew the life that we were having. At that age, I didn't fault it. I didn't, okay, mom and dad, I gotta go to work. And as I kept growing up, then I understood like what I was missing out in my later years, maybe like 16, 17, which is kind of like that rebellious stage, and you're talking back and you're like saying what's on your mind. So I remember that we would have so much conflict, and it was because they'd be away at work all day, come and just want to be like, do this, do this, do that. But we were missing that nurturing part. So structure and discipline is needed and necessary. And yes, children should listen to their parents. But when you can balance both, like, I love you, I'm here for you, I'm creating this bond, but at the end of the day, I'm still mom and dad. I feel like it's a more cohesive and flowing. I'm not saying that there's not going to be problems either, but when you're missing the nurturing part, it's just like all you do is come and fight all day long because we're not feeding into that bond. So as I since a young age, I would go to work with them. My sisters never wanted to. We're 3 girls. And I think that they just saw like, all right, this one likes to work. Like this one, she's going to figure it out one way or another. Right. I did it because I liked the money, but I wanted to be with my family. So it was both.
Both. Got it. Okay.
So as I would go to work with them and be on the cash register, I loved like interacting with people and being that smile and being that difference and saying that good morning, which was just natural to my parents, natural to most of the Latin culture. I would say, maybe, I hope you all meet nice, happy Hispanics and kind people who are very hug and kiss and how are you? You know, it's not just like transactional,
Right.
which is something I loved and admired. And as years went by, they stayed constant in that like love for their customers versus other places like just termed transactional because they became bigger and corporations and all that. So, okay. The whole thing happens with my grandmother. She's trying to turn us against my mom. I was the rebellious yet hardworking one. It was like, I'm a very weird dynamic. Like, I swear, I'm like the boy that they didn't have.
Right.
But as hardworking as I was, as my own independent thinking that I was, and those are conflictive for a parent, right? It came to the point that, you know, I had to tell my mom what was going on. My grandmother did not want to talk about it. She chose to move away after she was raising us. So it's like, okay, your grandma's gone. Like the one who's been with you, raising you, she's out because you outed her to your mother. So I don't think my brain understood at that time because I think I was like 16. I was just like, she's doing something wrong and she's gone. As I grew up, and we'll get into the psychedelics and whatnot, and I asked about like my past and my grandparents and all that. Then I found out that my grandmother, her mother died at birth. She was raised by her stepmother. And she was like outside of the marriage of that man, which means she was put off to the side in another town. So she lost her mother. She never had a mother. She didn't have those maternal instincts and nurturing and love. She marries my grandfather to escape the abuse that was going on as her being the stepchild. Okay, we're talking about back in the day where there was only dirt roads and poverty and like polio and stuff like that was happening in that time.
Yeah.
Okay, they get married. She runs off with him thinking it's gonna be like a better future. Not everybody's perfect, and when you're living in survival, you're surviving. What is that? What can that mean? Alcohol. So now you have a woman who was born not in a loving relationship. Her mother dies at birth. She runs off to look for a better future, marries an alcoholic, has a whole bunch of kids living in poverty. And then we come here to America, my mom, hardworking, trying to figure out this plan because this is a pain that she's carried growing up.
Right.
But then in a moment where you should be happy for your daughter, I don't know, because I don't know her psyche, I don't know her feelings. She passed away already. Maybe she was jealous of my mom. So then that's a pain of like, this woman is trying to work so hard to provide for her family and give her mother what she never had. But low key, is that triggering or making her jealous that you got to live a fulfilling life and have a marriage and have kids and have financial wealth? Then your mother betrays you, right? So we're seeing this.
Do you feel like, Arnold Schwarzenegger had a line, you measure success by how many haters you have. And you would think it wouldn't come internally from the family.
You would think.
You would think. But in every book, in every scripture, there's the story of Jacob and Joseph, right? Okay.
Enlighten me. I don't know them all, and I'm learning.
Okay, forgive me. Jacob has six stepbrothers.
Okay.
Okay, or half brothers, right? The brothers, the kids kind of know that Joseph is the favorite.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. Joseph has six stepbrothers. They kind of know he's the favorite. So
the one that they betrayed him and sold him off to slavery.
Right.
Yes.
They dump him in a well.
Yes.
They say he passed away and he's basically sold to slavery. Right. He ends up in a prison in Egypt, and he later becomes the minister because he's able to see the dreams. To read the dreams of, there's somebody who could read dreams in the prison. They pull him out. He becomes a minister in Egypt, right? Under the Pharaoh, okay? And the brothers come begging for help during the famine. And he took pity on his brothers. And he said, no, you have to go back and give me this. So they go back to get this from the father, and they bring the father back. And the father who had went blind from crying, Jacob, puts the cloth on his face and immediately can see. To that effect, that your own brothers would out
Your own blood.
Your own blood, yeah.
So then what that's great that you brought that up, because looking back into that situation, so I remember how my mom like worked so hard, and in one trip, like I don't know how many thousands of dollars it was to get them all over here legally. I remember my mom, we all flew out there. We got them all on the same airplane, brand new clothes, because we wanted them to come to America and like feel like they belong. We didn't want them to remember like that they came from the dirt, right? So look at how intentional my mom was with all of this. She had brought over my grandmother first. My grandmother was with us. My mom was bringing over all her family, all her thousands and thousands of dollars. You know what these processes cost, okay? So mind you, sacrificing time with her kids, with her family, because the bigger picture is bringing over everyone and like everyone being united. Well, they come over, but when you get things easily, you don't appreciate them.
Not everybody's ready to rise with you. And sometimes this is the story of there's a loyalty factor, and there is. But when you're ready to reach that next level, you have to be working or have a mindset to rise with people. Mm-hmm. They have to be a part of your success. And you have to understand, if people aren't really willing to invest in you to be part of the success, they don't belong there. If they're not willing to enable you, they're not ready.
But then how do you know this when you've been living here for 10, 15 years and finally you've been able to save up enough to bring your family over, which is all you want? You don't know this. You're expecting we're all together.
You don't.
We're going to be able to work together. Then what happens?
Yeah, you don't.
They come, full room set up, work, jobs, clothes, everything. Things that my mother and my father had to learn on their own, not knowing the language. So every step that they've taken, they've like savored it. They've worked for it. That's why they are where they are, because they know the hard work.
Appreciation. There's a funny story I always like to tell. I did my first undergrad in management and finance, and after school I worked in accounting. So I worked in accounting for 2 years. And I remember I was thinking about getting into the training field at that time to raise some money to buy a house. And I would later buy the first house, probably after the first year, full time. Mm-hmm. But I was writing workouts as a hobby. Man, I could really program even back then. And it's funny because I wrote a workout for somebody. You know, he had told me, listen, I can't do a push-up. I can't do more than, I can't do 10 push-ups. I can do about 5. And I can't really do a dip. So I wrote him a program, and I remember giving it to him. And I remember, this is really funny. And he said to me, and it really taught me a lesson. I asked him 3 weeks later, how's the program going? He said, I showed it to my cousin. He said it was baby shit. So I didn't really do it. And my first thought is,
if it's baby,
who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? You don't even have a base. You can do 5 push-ups. You can't do a fucking dip. Who the fuck are you?
And it's baby, and you can't even stick to it.
But I've always had this problem in the training field, so you understand. Your favorite athlete or celebrity is doing a workout, a program, right? He spent 15 years showing up every fucking day to build a base. Yeah. And now all of a sudden, forget the fact he might be on performance-enhancing drugs. Let's forget the fact that he might, have all the recovery methods in the world and the time to recover. Let's forget all that shit for a second. He showed up every fucking day for 15 years, and somehow you think you're going to surpass him in 15 minutes? Make this make sense for me. Mm. When did you become God's gift to the world?